You are now listening to CTR Media Network.
The family, CTR Media Network. Yeah. Best in the biz. Yeah. Join the team. CTR is who we are, the media network, that's the best by far. Whether you listen at your home, at your job, in your car, come get the information that's needed above all. Never lasting, motivational podcasting, giving you the answers to the questions that you're asking. Serious talks and topics, how to come up and profit, how to better yourself, your health is here, we got it. Reaching 350 million, they tuning in. We in 50 different countries, we all can. And like minded, find your purpose and your assignment. Come get your fix, your feel, your mental alignment. Get active and speak to the masses. Build your influence all levels and all classes. Now you know you can monetize and grow. CTR Media Network, start the show. CTR Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CTR Media Network TV, where we empower entrepreneurs, creators, and industry disruptors to grow through the power of podcasting, TV, and media. Today's guest is someone who turned her personal story into a platform of empowerment. She's a speaker, a strategist, a best-selling author, and host of Empower Endeavors. Please welcome to the show for us to discuss the topic of discussion of today. Your story is your superpower. Brand clarity, Mrs. Shaunna Lee. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I am doing really great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I am actually very excited about this because now I'm going to get the female perspective. I had the privilege of interviewing a whole lot of different men on this topic, but now I'm bringing in the estrogen, and we're going to have this conversation about how we can use our voice as a powerful tool. And even though we are living in a chaotic world, how we can drown out the noise. So when I think about you, Shaunna, I think about your journey because you mentioned about you went from corporate America, a corporate strategist, and how you use storytelling to inspire. So what exactly was the turning point where you realized that your personal story was actually your greatest strength?
Well, it actually started with what I call the prettiest divorce book you'll ever read. And that was the book that I wrote after my third divorce. And this was a low in my life. And I, in a moment of meditation, decided that I could either use that as the thing that knocked me down and left me kind of defeated, or I could use it for what it is, which is helpful information to help guide other people through their own divorce. So if I can put together my life and make something amazing out of it after a third divorce, surely you can handle the one that you're facing. And that's really where it all started. And when you set down a path to go do one thing and it leads to another and then another, and here I am, 10 years later with this amazing business, this super fun podcast to show for it.
I love it. We always hear the phrase, or I should say the statement, turn your pain into purpose. But you really exemplify that statement. Like if we needed a person or a definition, like here you are, right? You really turned your pain into purpose. And then what I especially love is that the vulnerability, because we know divorce can be a topic that many people do not want to go deep into. And then to mention that you have 3 showing your vulnerability, and then look what you created outside on the other side of divorce. So when I think about your story isn't just something that you decided to hide. It was something that you chose to share in order to empower others. So why do you feel that storytelling and still telling your story is so critical for us to do today as entrepreneurs or content creators?
So really there's 2 sides to it. in terms of how I look at it. So what I realized, so let me tell you, first of all, the idea of writing a book about divorce and going out to tell the entire world that I've been divorced 3 times was appalling to me. I was like, wait a second, this cannot be what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Like, I didn't want to tell anybody. So yes, absolutely a moment of vulnerability. But what I realized was there's such power in me sharing that story. One, it is very healing. So, selfishly for me, I was able to heal through the telling of my story. Secondarily, what I realized, and this was not so much in the telling of my story, but in hosting my podcast. So, Empowered Endeavors is all about sharing other people's story and kind of giving a microphone, a stage to those people, and sharing my platform for other people to do the same thing. Because the second part of storytelling for me is we become expanders for other people. So, you hear someone's story and what they have survived through or what they have persevered through and what they make out of it, and even so much as seeing someone do what you want to do is such an expansive opportunity. So I love that my show gives me the opportunity to share that with people, because I think, yes, it's very healing for the person doing the storytelling, but it becomes this ripple effect for the rest of the world when we tell our stories and we see ourselves in other people. And really, I think that's where the unity comes from, right? We find out that we're really more alike than we are different, and there's just such power, and it's just this ongoing ripple effect of goodness, I like to say, when we use our voice and we come to the microphone and share our story.
You know, I never thought about the story as being something that's expansive. And that exactly is what a story, telling your story is, because, like you said, it shows that we have more in common than differences. It shows resilience. It shows that it is a light at the end of the tunnel, definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And here, I've been through this. You may just be starting this, but look what happened to me. And I'm no different than you, other than I decided that I wanted a different outcome than the vast majority of people. And so I feel like that point in itself is very powerful, knowing that your story that you may feel embarrassed about, or you may not want to be vulnerable with, is the very thing that will expand and also personalize who you are and what you do and how you can help that person or people solve their problem. So for those just starting out, when I'm thinking about that, I remember the first time I started my podcast, I actually started it for therapeutic reasons. People thought it was just this great whatever. I needed somewhere to vent. I needed somewhere to let out some steam. And I just was like, okay, day one, motherhood, homeschooling, and feeling sick. What do you do when you are the nurse, the doctor, and all these things?
Gosh, yes.
I just used it for that. But but someone who just starting out and they're at that plateau where they're saying, okay, or I would say that transition where they're like, okay, I have to do more, but I'm afraid. So what would you say would be the first step to them using their story to build connection and authority in whatever area they want to build it in? So if it's podcasting, it's podcasting. If it's motherhood, it's motherhood. But what type of advice that you would give them as the first step?
So I've coined myself the start again expert, because I've had all of these start again moments. My podcast actually started out being called Start Again with Shaunna Lee. It's now called Empowered Endeavors, because I wanted to really direct more of the business strategy to people's purpose and kind of marry these two things that we don't typically talk about. However, for people who are just starting out, that's what my entire show is about, is let me give you the tactical, practical action steps to take so that you can begin telling your story. So there's all sorts of different ways. So we talk about writing books, we talk about starting podcasts. I have an entire program built to teach people how to start a podcast in under 30 days, because the hardest part is showing up. And once you've shown up and said, I want to do this thing, then you just have to figure out what the very next step is. And so one of my favorite things to say is baby steps are better than no steps. As long as you've taken one tiny little action towards this goal that you have, you're making forward momentum each day, and it's going to get you closer to where you want to be in the end. So some days that's just talking to somebody and telling them your story. Some days that's I'm going to write it down and share something on social media. There's all sorts of little tiny ways that we can just tiptoe into that arena of, okay, I'm ready to start talking about this thing, or even just admitting to people in your life that you have this crazy goal. I want to write a book. I will just say that once you start telling people, here's my little note of caveat, all the naysayers come out of the woodwork to tell you all the reasons why that's a crazy idea. And I will just challenge everyone to say, when someone is giving me some feedback that doesn't feel amazing, have they done this thing I want to do? And if they have not, then perhaps we set their opinion aside, because we should be listening to people who've done the thing that we want to do as the guidance, as the feedback mechanism. Sometimes it's just Aunt Sally who is scared for us, right? Like,
it is. I agree with you on that. Years ago, I did not see myself as an authority to teach someone how to do a podcast, even though I created my own podcast.
Yeah,
Until
exactly.
my coach pulled me to the side and said, hey, you need to start a course. I'm like, I never did a course before. What are you talking about? So I watch what you're doing. She said, who do your branding? Who do your marketing? Who do your all the promotion? How you get your guests? All the different stuff. I said, well, I do all that. And she was like, well, don't you know you can teach? You are an authority. So sometimes it takes, like you said, not your auntie or your cousin, but someone who can see the potential that you may not see in yourself. And I started a podcast. I started my own course, and people bought in. Then later on, I had no idea that later on that one podcast will build a whole entire platform. And now got other podcasters that's on the platform. I would have never thought it in a million years, but it was that one initial person, my coach, that pulled me to the side and saw it when I didn't see it, because I only looked at it as, okay, this is therapeutic. Let me just share so I can feel better and be able to go into the next 24 hours and be able to smile and be a mother, a wife, an educator, a volunteer. I was not thinking about the business aspect in the beginning. That came later. So I find that you're taking those little baby steps is very, very crucial. Like you said, is because when I first started, when the idea was presented to me to start a course and all of that stuff like that, I took on too much at one time. And it became overwhelming to the fact that I wanted to stop. So I agree with you, taking those small baby steps and just doing a little bit every day. But for the ones who are listening in, what are some of the top mistakes, or I would say maybe 2 or 3 mistakes that you may have seen? I just mentioned some mistakes that I have had where I took on at one time, that you see that creators, podcasters are trying to merge these worlds together with media, because they're deciding that, hey, I want to write a book like you mentioned. I'm going to choose to tell my story in a book versus doing a podcast. Then we have the ones that say, I'm going to do a podcast, not a book. So what mistakes do you see most people make when they're trying to go into having more visibility for themselves?
Well, you're hitting on a couple topics that I have addressed specifically in my podcast recently. So I did an episode on the top 3 mistakes podcasters make. The first one that comes to mind is overthinking. We can overthink some stuff, and we get in our own ways. And I think that is the top one. We sit in this, what is the phrase, analysis paralysis? Like, we can just think through things so much that then we're frozen and we're not taking those steps and taking action. So I think overthinking is the top one that comes to mind. because yeah, we can just get in our own ways so many times. And I think when I'm thinking about people increasing their visibility, I hosted a workshop recently on social media specifically, and I was introducing this concept of it's okay to be on social media to these real estate agents. And what I told them was, again, we can overcomplicate things. People want to get in and I see people do one of two things. Either you're hiding behind the work of doing the thing that you want, creating the book, creating the podcast, and then you forget to tell people about it. That's kind of the first step in visibility where I think people make a mistake. But the second one is trying to be in all the places and do all the things for all the people all at one time. Pick one social media platform where your audience, your specific audience, is spending their time, and go deep on that one platform. And then you can roll it out. Listen, I'm a big fan of repurposing content. You can create one piece of content and reuse it in all sorts of different ways. But to begin and to get started, just pick one. Keep it simple.
I agree with you. And for individual who may be having a hard time with which platform I should pick, what should I do? You need to think about who your ideal person
Exactly.
is. Okay. And where do they spend their time? Are they on Facebook? What is their age? Is they older? Are they a younger group of people? Are they baby boomers versus millennials? You need to understand the people who you want to try to help, right? And I tell people, if you don't know, start putting out content on social media. You can use various ones at first, but the key is I want you to do this. Go back and look at your analytics, because sometimes you think you know your audience, but data never lies. Okay, it's gonna let you
100%.
know
Yes.
who you thought was your audience may not necessarily be your audience. And then after you know, then you can create content that is directly specifically for them. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, it's bringing up this really interesting example for me. So when I wrote this book, I was writing it for divorced moms. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to help the mamas out there be happier, whole human beings so they could show up for their kids in the way that they need to. I just saw so many, and I was guilty of this myself, so many women just suffering unnecessarily. And then as a result, their kids were getting this half person to guide
Mm-hmm.
them. And so, anyways, I wrote it for women, and I have had more men read my book than women. And so the data doesn't lie. And I think what you were saying earlier kind of was taking me down this idea as well, that we can take one little step and we can start the one thing that we think is our passion project or the next great business idea or whatever it is. We never know where it's going to lead. It will always lead us down some different path that was not the intended path. And it ends up being amazing, but most people did not set out to do what it is they're actually doing. And it just starts with one crazy little idea that you take action on. And then, yeah, pay attention to the data along the way.
I agree with you, because when I first started out, I don't want to age myself, but when I first started out, literally my whole audience, the people who I wanted to touch were women and girls. Okay. That was my target. That was my avatar that you hear in all the big mastermind classes. Who is your avatar? My avatar is a mom. My avatar, she may have 2-3 kids, da, 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 da. And I started creating all this content. And even though I do have the moms and I do have girls as well, what surprised me once the data started coming in was that it was the men who was mostly watching, and it was young boys. And they was like, can you create some content or give us some tips on what we can do for our health and wellness, what we can do for our mental health, what we can do for, our podcast or our business, And I was like, what? Can you coach me? And I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Man. So, and I would say this, because I want to piggyback off what you said. Once the data comes in, one mistake that I see that content creators make, entrepreneurs, content creators, podcasters make, is that once the analytics and the data comes in, and now they can finally see who's listening to their show, who's watching, men, women, age breakdown, education breakdown, everything like that. Even, and if it don't look like who they think it should look like, they still create the same content.
Oh, yes.
They do not want to be flexible and don't want to adjust. And then you're wondering why your business is not growing, your podcast is not growing, you're not able to go to the next level. Is because you're not willing to be flexible and adjust based upon what your audience want. Who cares what you want to do? They're going to tell you what they want, and you create that because they're your clients, they're your future customers. So with that being said, do you agree with that? I find that you get stuck.
Yeah.
Want to do what you want to do, and then you finally get the answers, and then you still stay doing what you do. How would we address this with them? Because I feel like if we just stop that one bad mistake right there, it would change so many content creators, entrepreneurs, and podcasters' life.
Oh,
just
sure.
That
well, and I think we saw lots of examples of this during COVID, right? Like how many businesses learned how to pivot and meet their audience where they were with what was happening in the world, and how many continued to try to do business the same way they always had and really struggled and didn't make it. So I think your ability to pivot based on what your audience is telling you is critical, and it will make or break your success, 100%.
I agree. And I have saw, and you're correct, many of those businesses are no longer here in 2025 because they refuse to pivot, refuse to change. And so, audience, let me tell you something. If you have ever struggled to tell your own story, today is the day that you need to really lock in and listen, because Shaunna is just breaking it down, helping us understand, getting us out of the chaos that we call life.
Life.
But she has the insight to help us to be able to take control of it and be able to maneuver and be able to make a lasting impact. Because I'm all about making or doing something that's going to create a lasting impact. That's why I chose to do podcasting and TV streaming, because who don't like to watch TV? Who don't like to listen to a good podcast, right? And so I feel like we need to talk about this topic of burnout.
Oh,
because
gosh, yes. Let's do it.
we can probably write a book on this, but burnout is something that all creators, all entrepreneurs, all podcasters, all parents, moms, whomever who can breathe, they experience at some point. So when I think about everything that you do, you have spoken openly about burnout and how to bounce back. So what mindset did you have to have in order to shift so that you can move from just surviving to thriving in a purpose-driven success that you was able to build for yourself?
Well, I'll tell you the same thing I tell my children, which is do as I say, not as I do. Because what I did and the approach I took was very dramatic. I have 4 children, and 2 of the girls are also very dramatic. And just yesterday I said, gosh, I don't know where they get it from. It's from me. I am very dramatic. I blow my whole life up with the choices I make. If things aren't working, I'm like, let's burn it to the ground. It doesn't have to be, what do the kids say now? It doesn't have to be that deep. It's not that deep. Yeah.
No, it's not that deep.
So it's not. So I highly recommend really looking at the source of burnout. So what is it that's causing you to be feeling exhausted and overworked and just drained of the energy that you need? Typically, it's one of 2 things for me. So in my mind, burnout leads to much more extreme mental health concerns like anxiety that's chronic, or depression that sends us into these, massive life-altering events. Burnout is kind of the first little red flag that goes up to me. And really, it comes down to not being seen and heard for who you are and feeling disconnected from what really matters. And so when we can look at the source of that burnout, first of all, you can prevent, yourself from having to make big dramatic choices like I did. Like, you don't have to quit your job and start to write a book. You don't have to, throw caution to the wind and take crazy risks. I think this is a lot of where midlife crisis moments come from as well, is most people are just looking for connection with the people in their life, with themselves most of the time, being able to kind of tap into what is it that my inner being is calling me to do or to say? How am I not being seen in my day-to-day life? That is the key to kind of just determining, how do I bust out of burnout, but also what do I do that's more purposeful moving forward? How do I really tap into what is my purpose? And then we don't have to, dye our hair pink and buy the sports car. Like, we can just tap into that instead.
I don't know. I think many people gonna still buy that sports car, but
Probably.
they might defer from the pink hair and do something else extravagant. But I have never heard anyone equate burnout to being seen, being heard. And when you mentioned that, it did make me think, because why does one get burned out? It's because they're trying to do something and it's not working, and they spend a lot of time on that something to be seen, to be heard, to connect with the people who they feel that whatever they're doing is going to change their life. But I have never thought about the concept of burnout being connected to that. And from a mental health perspective, I have never thought about it so deeply until you just said it. Burnout can be the precursor to depression. It can be the precursor to anxiety. And I would like to add on, it can be the precursor to people getting ulcers, people having insomnia. But I have never equated it in those two ways until I heard you say it. But it's like that light bulb moment. I'm like, you know what? It is that, because at the end of the day, as human beings, we just want to be heard. We just want to be seen, especially if something means something to us. So,
Well, and it's a full circle moment for me as well, because that's at the heart of each of my divorces. So if we talk about where I started, with divorce being such a prevalent part of my story, and really looking at what the root of that is, it's the same darn thing. It's not being seen and heard, feeling disconnected, feeling burnout. And I mean, how many people can relate to that? Probably every single person listening.
yeah, every single person. Because at some point, I think we have all felt that. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, you can work a traditional 9-to-5 job, and you giving all of your time, your expertise to the boss, and they never see you when it's time for promotion.
Yeah.
You never get the promotion or something like that. Or it can be in academics. A teenager, anyone can experience this thing of not being seen, heard, and connected. So I think I really appreciate that new perspective. And I'm gonna dive deep into it for my personal research, because I think that is remarkable, because I have never put those things together. And now that we're discussing it, I can see how that's pretty much the foundation that we don't want to build, that creates burnout and that avalanche effect.
And it really it came to light in all these conversations I'm having within companies. So when I go and have speaking engagements with these companies and host these workshops, what's coming up for the employees who are burnout is just that, right? They're not their efforts and what they are contributing isn't being acknowledged. And a little bit of acknowledgement, a little bit of visibility goes such a long way. I think a lot of companies are trying to solve the problem in the wrong way. And you can see an underperforming employee and think, well, I just need to replace them and let them go and replace them. And really, you could have just spent a couple extra minutes connecting with that employee to see what was important to them. And everyone learns differently, so the type of accolades or kudos that they need will be different as well. So it can't be a one size fits all approach. And that again comes down to connecting with the human being that's in front of you.
On that, I feel that everyone should, like with my clients that I do one-on-ones with, I make them take a DISC assessment test. Um, Only because I need to, what you just said, I need to understand how I can use what I do with visibility podcast and media outreach. What helps you? I need to know what makes you feel good. How can I better service you? What type of learner you are? When I'm giving you direction and instruction from the team, how are you going to be able to, is it going to hit? How it's going to hit, right? And so I feel like having these personality tests, number one, and these DISC assessment tests to understand where a person is. Do this person like to work in a team setting versus being solo? Do they thrive more doing things as a project solo than being with a group? Do they like doing stuff by the, it's just, we have to take the extra time. And that is the connection part that I feel like we're so disconnected from a human standpoint, more so than ever. We have advanced so much in technology and the way that we disperse information. But within those advancements, we're losing more and more of the personable touch that we as human beings, no matter what education, what color of your skin, what part of the world you're on, we all need the rudiments of connection and appreciation and recognition. We still need that in the midst of all the technology. And I see as we get more and more better in advancing technology, I see that just lacks, and soft skills have become like it's extinct at this point.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at kids right now, so many kids are struggling with anxiety to levels that, like when I was growing up, wasn't even a thing. And they're dealing with this information age that is so very different. We've got information coming at us at speeds that is just astronomical. And it reminds me of this story when my oldest daughter is married, and her husband, my son-in-law, the very first time we would hang out, everyone's, looking at their phones. And he's like, wow, you're all so connected. And it was just like this moment where I was like, oh gosh, he's right. Like, we're in the same room with each other and not connecting with each other at all. And I think that is, again, at the root of what we're talking about, is that that's what's missing for people. We think we're more connected because we can talk to and see what all our friends are doing across the world, right? But we're really not connected with the people who are in the room with us.
We really not. We're so techie. Even if you're not a techie, we all still use cell phones. And so I think getting back to the core and bringing it back to entrepreneurship, being a creator, being a podcaster, being a business owner, the nuances of what makes you unique in the marketplace is your ability to be able to connect on a more pure, trustworthy credibility, making them feel safe, but yet providing them the solution to what they need. But in essence, making a person feel special. Making them feel special. And so I feel like podcasting is a way that we have been able to get closer in some ways, but we still need that one-on-one, that personal touch. And so when I think about us as women, I know men, y'all watch like it, you 50 something percent, and then the women 40 something. But I'm gonna talk to the women for a moment. Don't get in your feelings. But as a woman, especially a mother, what we have to deal with. Have you ever experienced, as you finally discovered what it is that you wanted to do, and you feel ambitious and happy about what you want to do, and while honoring what you want to do, but do you ever feel the guilt of, should I be doing more? How can I do more as a mom? At the time when you was a wife, do you ever wrestle with those feelings of inadequacy?
Oh, listen, guilt has been like my little sidekick for my whole life. And mom guilt is a whole thing. I think for me, and I just told this story yesterday, but for me, the moment where it started to shift, because so my oldest daughter is 31. So I've been a mom now for a long, long time.
Mhm.
And I spent so much time with mom being a part of my identity and my purpose. And it took the front seat over my career when I was in corporate in a lot of ways. I wanted to be a hands on, you know, I wanted to be a good mom. And that was what took priority for me. And it wasn't until my oldest daughter turned 18 and I heard the still small voice of spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, when I was lamenting that, oh my gosh, I'm done. My time with her is over. And first of all, we're never done parenting our children. She very much still needs me as a parent in her life, but it shifts and it changes over the years. And what I heard was they were never yours to keep.
Mm.
And oh man, it gutted me in the moment. And I was just like, I mean, oh, okay. But also, oh, okay. And so in that moment, it got real for me because I thought, well, this I thought was my whole purpose in my life was to be a good mom. And I realized I have a whole lot of life left. Now what am I going to do? If momming isn't my purpose or the sole reason I'm here, it had me really have to look internally and say what is that going to be? So then yes, I go on this mission. I built this whole incredible business. I love what I do and what I get to do. And oh, by the way, I'm still parenting a couple kids at home who are like, "Hey mom, do you think maybe you want to stop working and come feed us some dinner?" And why do they have to eat all the time? Um, but yeah, and so I am constantly in the where do I find the balance and how do I do everything that I want to do? And I will just say life is chaotic and I don't always get it right, but I know I have to feed myself first. And so much of my business is feeding my soul that
Mhm.
that does get to take priority. And then I also know that when I'm with my kids, I need to fully show up and be with them. And I put my phone down when my daughter gets in the car. I make sure I've ended any phone calls so that she gets my full attention for her monologue recap of the day that's so very important to her. And just, I do my best to be in the moment with who I'm in the moment with.
And I would say to the viewing and listening audience, mothers, but also fathers, you can take this information as well. You will never be perfect. You will never find this pie in the sky that says you can have a work-life balance. I have been on this journey since forever. And to be honest with you, I personally feel there is no such thing as a work-life balance. It's just simply whatever you're focusing on at a time, you give your full
Yeah.
attention to it, and you do the very best that you can on the thing, the person, or the task that you're doing at that particular time. Understanding that as you work on one task, something else is not getting done. As you are spending time with your family, something else is not getting done. But at that moment, family is the priority. At that moment, that particular task needs your focus. And making sure, for me, what I had to do, because I thoroughly enjoy what I do, I had to make sure that I added my family onto my calendar.
Yes.
I had to do it. I know it might sound a little silly, but I would get to the point where they were like, Mom, okay, you're going to come up from the computer, you're going to come up from the event because I'm traveling too. And I was like, okay, how can I do this? And so I literally put in time, block out time for my children, my husband, and I put in time for myself.
Yes. Yes. I'm so glad you said that because that was the other thing I was going to say. A lot
Mhm.
of times people will say their response to the big thing that they want to do.
Mhm.
Or for me, for years, it was, we need to exercise. It's good for our bodies. And I would say, I just don't have the time. Everyone says, I just don't have the time. The truth is, you make time for what's important. And
Mhm.
you do that by being intentional about how you're scheduling your time. And so, yes, we have to schedule time for everything, but also make sure that we get on the calendar. just time with you is so, so important. And I think that's universal. I think that goes for men and women alike. I think
Mhm.
everyone can, I think women have an extra set of expectations when it comes to parenting that's a little different. I do think it's shifting for fathers. We're expecting way more of fathers today than we ever have. Um, and so I think for all of us, we can use the reminder that we are also important and to schedule time for what is important.
I 100% agree. For years, I always put everybody and everything ahead of myself, thinking that I was doing something great. It was a badge of honor, while
Yeah.
I personally, in silence, suffered and were plagued with depression and anxiety and panic attacks all the time.
Yeah.
And once I stopped allowing myself to feel guilty for needing a timeout, okay,
Yeah.
needing some time to myself. So people look at timeout as bad. I said, no, I put myself in timeout. They're like,
Oh,
what you mean?
I
Like,
call
I'm
them all the time out.
out. No one can talk to me.
Yes, I tell my kids all the time, not as much anymore, but in the old days, I would say, "Mom needs a timeout. I'm taking a timeout."
Mhm.
It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing for sure.
It's a very good thing. And so when we're thinking about now we have some organization to the chaos and the madness, where we were telling about the tips and strategies, adding yourself to a schedule, dropping the guilt, understanding that at the end of the day, there's really, in my opinion, no true work-life balance. It's just what you prioritize at that moment, understanding that you're just doing the best that you can do at that time, and the power of using organization and calendars to keep you on that daily list of whatever you have to do. Um, let's talk about how we can create our content as business owners, as entrepreneurs or podcasters with clarity, because you're all about clarity and
Mhm.
purpose. And so let's talk a little bit about what I absolutely love is podcasting. So what
Yes.
does launching a purpose aligned show look like in today's world? We can talk about what it looked like for you and then piggyback how it may possibly look like for a person who want to start, like a hypothetical.
So I think podcasting is a great example to talk about this because from my own experience, what I started out to do and what I thought the podcast was about really in the beginning was just about me learning the mechanics and getting used to being seen and heard and realizing that I had value in what I had to say. That was the real big obstacle for me in the beginning. And so it didn't matter what I called it, it didn't matter how I organized the show because it really was just about me showing up and using my voice. And then as we evolve and as we grow and as I healed, I could see the purpose underneath that. I had
Mhm.
built a platform and then I could use it more intentionally to help my business, more intentionally to I like the visual of a pebble being dropped in the pond and the ripples. Like my
Mhm.
ripple effect is my whole goal. I want to drop a little goodness in someone's life and have them take it a little step further and have it reach someone else. And that to me is my impact. That's and another visual is just me being able to shine my light and
Mhm.
show who I am. What it does is not about ego or look how great I am, but what it does is shine a light on the path for other people. So the
Mhm.
more I can show up and be who I am and be authentic and create content that is heart centered, the more it opens up other people's vision for what lies in front of them on the path that they are choosing.
I
That's
agree
how I
with
see
you
it.
on that because when I think about, I'm gonna go back to something that you said that really resonated with me. Once you started creating your content and you were saying how it really wasn't about the name of your podcast in the beginning, it was about you. Basically, you were saying figuring it out. And also that self-sabotaging, that self-doubt that we tend to have,
Oh,
because you
yes.
mentioned the word that finding value. What is what I'm doing? Is it valuable? And I think as podcasters, as entrepreneurs, when you're first starting out and you do not have the visibility, you do not have the followers that you feel like you should have. You may not have all the customers or clients you think you should have at that moment, just starting out. You start thinking to yourself, and what is it what I'm doing valuable? Is who I am good enough? Am I bringing value to the world? And the answer is yes, you are, but you have to work through it and understand that it's a lot of things that goes against you when you're on social media. The algorithm, whether you're doing paid ads versus no paid ads, organic growth, your SEO optimization. It's a lot of things that goes into whether or not it doesn't mean your content is bad. It may not just be placed properly, or you just may be what they call it. It's not blacklisted, but where they my husband could tell me if it's where they kind of block your content from being seen more.
Yes. I forget the term for it, but I know what you're talking about. And I think you're also hitting on another part of why I started my pod launch program, was because that was my journey with my podcast. But I've learned a few things along the way. Like, let me shorten your path. Let me show you what is important when you're naming. Like, had I known how important keywords are in the name of your podcast, I probably would not have started with the particular title I had. And I just think that and again, that's valuable content for me to share, right? So I think had I not shown up and started speaking, I wouldn't have learned all the things, and certainly wouldn't be where I am now.
That's true. Same case with myself, because I had to figure out a lot, because I'm sure when you started, it wasn't a Shaunna. When I started, it wasn't a Tina, and if it were, they weren't sharing anything out that could resonate with me. I saw the people that was eons ahead of me, but where was the person just starting out that did not know
exactly,
that's being vulnerable enough to say, hey, I was just putting out content at first, like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it stick. I didn't know. So what tools or routine would you suggest that they can do that can align them with their mission while they're building content? Because you will feel those moments of, I call them podcast blues. Now, I don't know if it's a certain name, but I came up with, listen, you're gonna have you're gonna have homeschooling blues. If you're a homeschooler, you're gonna have these podcast blues, where you're not gonna feel as inspired as you were when you first came up with the idea.
Oh yes, so the honeymoon wears off.
Yeah, it's like, oh. So what can we do? What tools can we use, or a tool that we can use to kind of like make our life easier? I mean, there's so much technology out here. So what's something that we can use or something like that to make it easier?
For me, it comes back to the flow alignment method, which is this method I take my clients through. And it essentially is the basis of who you are. And it's custom for everybody because we're all so unique and different. But we all have three elements of who we are: our body, our physical body, our mind that tries to run the show, and the spirit, like the essence of who we really are. And I think when we can tap into each of those and connect, I think physical movement and our environment is so important. So there's all these tactical different ways that you can bring in your physical body elements. And then I love journaling from a mind perspective to change the story, rewrite the narrative, like be able to get the monkey mind to be quiet, like being able to kind of get that in alignment. And then also tap into your higher being and who you are and where you're really going. And when we can get those three components of us every day, you've got this kind of rinse and repeat process for yourself. For me, it's meditation, journaling, and some sort of movement or decluttering my space. And so if I can just get those three things each day, what it allows me to do is get alignment with who I am. at the core of who I am. So then I can get into the creative flow a little bit easier and the words come out a little easier. It's when the good idea for the next podcast topic comes. It's in those moments of alignment that we're in flow and things can process easier. That's where clarity comes in. That's where the noise kind of falls to the side. It's where the chaos of the day, you could kind of just set it aside for a second. And I think that is the key to being able to bust through the podcast blues or whatever the case may be that you're looking at. Because yeah, life gets overwhelming and we all get, the chaos going. And so we just have to be able to recenter.
Yes, we do have to learn how to recenter. I'm all about alignment with your purpose. And I find that when you finally understand what your purpose is, and then you know how it feels and how it looks and to be aligned.
Yes.
When you get aligned, that's when when you get misaligned, that's when you have extra stuff happening. And if I'm noticing that a lot of things is just not going the way it need to go, or it's extra harder than it usually is. Yes. I stop what I'm doing. I get silent. I meditate and say, okay, I missed the line somewhere because I'm experiencing too many unnecessary things. I know we're all going to experience challenges and different stuff like that, but then it's something that exceeds the natural span of challenges. And normally that is when you are misaligned. And once you get yourself back aligned, then you will notice that you're going to be able to overcome that self-doubt a little bit quicker. You're not going to allow a setback to stop you from bouncing back. You're going to understand that that's just a part of the journey. This is a learning experience versus a failure. When you align, you can see the clarity and the focus much better. So for people who are not aligned, you need to learn what that looks like for you. And when you're out, you need to learn how that feels when you're misaligned. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think it takes practice, right? So you hit on a couple things, which is the more that we practice being in alignment, we get familiar with how it feels so that it's easier to recognize when we're out of alignment. And then we don't get caught up in the chaos kind of taking us down the path. Once you get familiar with what it feels like to be in alignment, it's easier for you to course correct when you recognize things aren't going the way you want them to go, and to kind of, oh, wait, I'm out of alignment. Let me tap back in. And I think there's power in the pause. So, we talked about mom guilt earlier, and there's in this society that we live in, there's so much value placed on what you're producing and what you do and how much you're generating, that we tend to feel guilty when we rest or relax. And it's so counterintuitive because it's in those moments of quiet that we get to refuel. And in those moments of pause, you are actually doing something extremely valuable because you're getting yourself back in alignment. You're getting back into the flow. And instead of feeling guilty about it, you should feel more intentional about choosing to do that on purpose, because that's how we recenter. It's how we recognize when we're out of sync.
I love the phrase that you said. It's power in the pause. That should be a shirt. It is. It is power in the pause. I had to learn to do that, and I had to learn that sometimes it's more power in standing still than moving fast.
Yes.
And as long as you're making some sort of progress every day, I say 1%. I don't even make it grandiose. I'm like, if you made 1% improvement on yourself every day, that means in 100 days, you 100%. Okay, just 1%. And so for me, understanding that, because I was always that, I got to do this, I have to do that, mom, business partner, I'm always burning the candle at both ends. And I had to learn that was not a good thing. That hustle and grind mode is not a good thing, because you can't continuously be on all that adrenaline and not ever come down. It's not good for you mental health wise, and surely you're not going to be able to sustain whatever it is that you're doing. And so, like you said, we should be intentional with pausing, Intentional in slowing down, intentional in taking the time to learn how it feels when we are misaligned.
Yes,
And I had to learn
absolutely.
that. And that was one of the best tips that I can give everyone today is understanding your why, understanding your purpose, and most importantly, getting quiet with yourself long enough to get to really know you and your
Yes, and
needs.
that brings up one more point that I wanted to make, which is, we talked a little bit about meditation or moments of quiet, but it looks different for everyone. And so what you just said is what's most critical. Everyone needs to know what it looks like and feels like for them. So your
Mhm.
moment of quiet might be when you go run. It might be when there is physical movement involved. It doesn't always have to be, chanting in a silent dark room. Like it can be stolen moments. And I'll give you one example. I am a knitter, and I somehow have found myself where I thought this was the goal, to sit in the pickup line to get my kid from school every day. Like for years, I was feeling so guilty about not being the one to pick up my children from school. And then I realized I sit here in front of the school for like 30 minutes. And why am I doing this? Is this the best use of my time? And then the other kind of guilt came in. And what I finally have settled in is that is my time to sit and knit. I just listen to something on TV. It's my moment of quiet. It lets me recenter a little bit before my kid gets in the car and wants the stage. Like it has become my moment of pause, sort of
Yes.
because it was forced. But
Well, being intentional with your best use of your time. So you
mhm,
had to do it anyway, but how can you make this something your daughter is benefiting from, but how can you benefit from it? And so then
right.
you flip that scenario into, okay, I have to do this, but while I'm doing this, I'm also going to take care of me. I think that for the most part, in a nutshell, we need to learn ourselves. And once we
Mhm.
learn ourselves, we'll be better communicators, we'll be more connected, we'll be more intentional, and we will be more clear in every aspect of our life, whether it's personal, business, podcasting, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And that, once you get that clarity with oneself, you'll be able to project and be able to put out the right type of content, the right type of
Yeah.
podcast, because you know that you know that you know. And then your audience will come to you exactly for that solution that you bring. So,
Yes.
what when I think about legacy, leadership, the long game, because so many people on these short-term things, but I'm all
Oh
into
yeah. Yeah.
lasting impact. And so what legacy do you hope to leave through your Empowered Endeavors platform?
Listen, it's really small and tiny. No. I want to leave the world a better place than it was before I got here. I want my impact to have left it prettier and better
Mhm.
in whatever way that that looks like. I forget who said this, but there's a phrase that says people won't remember what you say. They won't remember necessarily what you've done, but they will remember how you made them feel. And
Mhm.
so that's what it's about for me is mostly I want to leave people feeling better. Listen, I leave every man better than I found him.
I know. They're gonna always remember you. Like, yes, yes, yes. And that's just with business partnerships, podcasts, and everything.
Mhm.
Um I too don't remember who actually said that quote, but I know that quote, what you just
Yes.
mentioned as well.
Yeah.
And people do, um, and I know that person. Now you're gonna have my mind going. I
I
have to
know.
find it.
I should
But
get better at the quotes and remembering who
yeah,
said them.
but that in itself, we remember things by how it makes us feel. And the more better we can make someone feel, including ourselves, it resonates and it leaves a lasting impact. So, what would be your final message that you would like to give to our listeners today with not being afraid to let their voice out and understanding how powerful their voice is, and that at the end of the day, their voice really does matter?
I would say that you're being selfish by not sharing your story because you don't know whose life you could have impacted for the good. You don't know who will be impacted in such a way that they choose to continue their life because of something you said, because they choose a different career because of something you've said. And I think there is such power in sharing your story because of the impact it can have on other people, that who are you not to say what you have to say?
I love it. I love it. And I too believe that it's selfish when we don't share our story. I know it can be a little scary at first because I felt like, who cares about my story? And then when I started sharing it, it was so many people that I helped. And I didn't even know that I was going to be able to help them because I felt that my story was just, unique to me. It didn't have any caliber or anything that could really help anyone else. And so, but that is not true. Your voice matters, your story matters. So, Shaunna Lee, thank you so much for coming on today's show. We had a really deep dive, a really good conversation about how we can live above the chaos and how we can get this clarity so that we can be the best versions of ourselves in personal and business life. You guys, I want you to do one thing for me. Go ahead and download the CTR Media Network app so you can see this interview and so many more at CTR Media Network. We are an edutainment platform that brings you impactful content from independent content creators, podcasters, TV hosts, events, and more. We talk about everything from business, entrepreneurship, careers, homeschooling, credit, whatever it is that you're dealing with, self-improvement, it is all there. I am not the only one on the platform. I am one of over 30-something podcasters, and you can go and get some amazing information for absolutely free by simply scanning the QR code on your screen right now and download. And the cool thing is the app is interactive, so you can heart your favorite episodes, write notes about what you learned as you're watching the episode so that you can be able to have the success that you want to have. Again, Shaunna, thank you so much for being here on today. And like always, you guys, we will see you next week, same time, same place. And before we go, is there anything else you would like to tell our viewing and listening audience?
Well, I would just like to invite everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn. Shaunna Lee on LinkedIn. You can see what I'm up to and tune in to Empowered Endeavors.
All right. You heard it here first. I don't know if it was first, but it's first on this platform.
I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Well, we had an amazing time, and you have an amazing rest of your day. This has been CTR Media Network TV. Have a good day. Bye.
Here's why you need to tune in right now. With CTR Media Network, you can transform your knowledge into a fully produced TV show. Imagine your content streaming on platforms like Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV, reaching over 350 million households in 140 countries. We take care of everything, from managing your ready-to-go content to global distribution. And it's not just any content, it's edutainment. A perfect blend of education and entertainment that keeps viewers coming back for more. You'll join a vibrant community of thought leaders, podcasters, and educators, all sharing a passion for impactful content and global reach. Plus, with our app available on Google Play and the App Store, your show will be accessible to millions more, ready to shine on the global stage. Let's get you started. Schedule a 15-minute call with us today and turn your idea into a TV sensation. Reply to this video by saying, "I want to learn more." Don't wait, your audience is out there waiting.